is a little bit frustrating for me is I will get into conversations with people and they will just believe these things that have no basis in reality whatsoever concerning history. And I'll wonder, how in the world did they get this idea? How in the world did they get this idea that history happened in some opposite way than what it really happened? And I'm always tracing the source back to fictional movies. It's really what it is. A lot of people haven't done their research. They haven't done any research. And the majority of their idea of history comes from Hollywood movies. So I'll have black people talking about, you white people come to Africa and kidnapped our babies and drug them off and all this. And you did this and you did that. And come to find out, some Jew in Hollywood that believes that Europeans are Amalek and wants the white race to go extinct has made a movie portraying white people as the most brutal and evil people possible and has made up all these lies, where the reality is the Jews doing business with Arabs and doing business with Arabs often purchased those slaves from black people who had went into black people on the west coast of Africa that had went into the interior of Africa and kidnapped those black people and sold them into slavery, or Arab Muslims from North Africa that went into the interior of Africa and captured those black people and sold them to Jewish merchants. And then those Jews sold them to white people, and Jews sold them to Jews. And so it's like people are, they're watching Hollywood movies and getting their history from Hollywood movies. And it's really just, there will be people that are so ignorant, that are so confident that they are right, and they've never read a primary account of history in their entire life. They've gotten all of their ideas of history from Hollywood Jews, all of those Jews coming from a 50 square mile radius of an area of Ukraine and Russia, like right in that area. A bunch of Jews from that area come to America, went to LA, that hated white people and started making movies. It's they were like, how do people get the idea that we would have just, Indians would have lived in peace had white people not showed up? Where'd they get that idea from? Hollywood. What's the reality? In archaeology, we find mass graves all the time, sacrifices all the time. In firsthand history, we have eyewitnesses that talk about Indians boiling the brains of people and making soups, scalping people, raping people, enslaving people, fighting back and forth with each other all of the time. It was like gangland in America before white people showed up. The Native Americans were like a bunch of hostile gangs at war with one another, constantly displacing one another, constantly, like the Iroquois, where they say, oh, that's one of them civilized tribes. They genocided 4 other tribes to take their territory. Most of the Native Americans that we displaced had already displaced other Native Americans. So it's not like the white people were especially violent and the Indians were peaceful, smoking a peace pipe, sitting around just living in peace and harmony with nature. A lot of the Native Americans believed that buffaloes were an infinite resource that come out from under the Great Lakes, that they were a spiritually created animal. They did not understand the migration patterns of buffaloes. They didn't understand that they were migrating in this circle. They were just living in the land, and out of nowhere, buffalo showed up. And buffalo showed up out of nowhere every single year. And they thought it was an infinite resource. So they would drive tons of them off of caves and just kill way more than they can eat. This idea that the Indian ate every part of the buffalo, and then white people come in and just didn't care and just slaughtered them all like crazy, is inaccurate. There were a lot of white people that shot buffaloes because they could make money off just the hides, and they left the meat to rot. That did happen. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but Native Americans did the exact same thing, and often on a larger and more reckless scale. We're told a lot of bullshit. So I got someone in the comment section, they was telling me that my people are the most murderous people in the world. And of their males, 1 out of 22 is a murderer. And of my people, you got to have 680 of them to get one murderer. So actually, your people are a lot more murderous. You abort 48% of your babies. You almost kill a baby for every baby that is born. But it's like, and then when I show the statistics, it's like, I really want to believe that they just do not have the will to believe the truth, that it's cognitive dissonance. I don't want to believe that they lack the intelligence to understand the concept of per capita. But my goodness, it's starting to seem that way. And I just sort of give up. Because when I think about it, they are a small percentage of the total American population. We can outvote them. We don't have to convince them of anything, really. We just need to. But there has been this massive propaganda war against white people to get white people to be suicidal, to get white people to think that they're a bad people, their culture's bad, that everything they did was bad, that everybody would be better off if they didn't exist, that they're not worth preserving, that there are no racial differences, that there's nothing special or valuable about white people worth preserving, and that we might as well just be Mexican Americans or African Americans or Muslim Americans, and that there's no value whatsoever of preserving the original people of America, the white American people. But white people ended slavery. We invented the whole concept that slavery was bad. No religion did it. I admire Christ and I admire Christianity. But if you're just speaking with the facts, for 2,000 years, it didn't end slavery. Christianity didn't end slavery. Black people didn't end slavery. The people in West Africa clung to slavery. They didn't want to give it up. They believed it was a sign of their manliness that they could dominate other people and have more slaves. The kings they picked were the people who had the most slaves. The British took their navy and said, any slaves that you try to sell, any ship leaving West Africa with slaves, we're going to capture them and we're going to set them free. We're going to ban slavery in the world wherever we can. The Americans worked in North Africa. We fought against the Berber pirates. Even after the British Empire in America had ended slavery, the slave trade continued for about, 500 years. You still had North Africans raiding southern European coasts and taking people into slavery to be used as galley slaves and to be used as sex slaves and slaves in Africa. We ended slavery. We got the idea. We feel bad for the other people. We're going to kill our own people to free them. We're going to use our navy to end slavery wherever we can. And the other people kept practicing slavery until we forced them to stop it. It's really one of the biggest, I'm not going to say the biggest injustice, but it is a big injustice in history that every single race of people in the world had slaves. Every single person done it. It was seen as the norm. And then white people had a heart to say, let's end this slavery. And then after it's all settled, white people are remembered as the slavers. We're remembered as the most evil people. and everybody else gets a pass. And there's so many people in this country that are so ignorant of history, they think that everything the Jews say in Hollywood fictional movies is the real history. And a lot of these people, they don't have a will to even know the truth. They don't care. It benefits them to have a victim mentality. And like 30% of African American DNA is European. Why is that? They're the descendants of the slave masters, more so than white people. And this is why they don't feel guilty leeching welfare. That's basically enslaving other people. How can you not be a net taxpayer and take $750,000 of government money? How can you have your rent subsidized, have your food subsidized, not pay for it? Have the white man pay for it. Have the white man pay for $750,000 in your lifetime and then claim oppression. How could you possibly do that? And how can you do it guilt-free? How can you leech so much from welfare and not feel guilty? How do you not feel ashamed to live off the labor of other men, the sweat of other men? It's essentially slavery. Now the slave masters, instead of just outright having slaves, they just slack off and don't work, and then they just take the money from the people who do work, and they eat off of EBT, and they eat off of government. They live off of government housing and subsidies, and they go and their children have education that they don't pay for. They're not net taxpayers. On average, black people are not net taxpayers. They cost the taxpayer more than they pay in. And on average, if you average it all out, it's $750,000 per lifetime. Their murder rate, 1 in 22. Our murder rate, 1 in 680 something. And yet they have the audacity to say that they're the ones that are oppressed. We're carrying you. You didn't even fight for your own freedom. We felt bad for you. We killed each other. White people said, you white people over there, you shouldn't be enslaving these people. Set them free. And if you don't set them free, I'm going to kill you. And we killed each other to set people free so they could hate us for the rest of time and leech off of our labor. And it wasn't like everybody in America had slaves at all. It was a small class. It was a small subsection of the population that had slaves. And then there was a lot of people that they didn't like it, but they weren't quite ready to go fight and die to fix it. And they preached in the country. From the very beginning of the country, there was a very strong abolitionist movement. There were several preachers, there were several people that preached against the evils of slavery for a long time. And they fought it out and they argued about it. And they eventually realized you can't really have a country where you have slavery and you don't have slavery. It's not going to work. We got to decide which way it's going to be. And we fought it out and are totally unappreciated for it. So my advice, if the Jews do wind up exterminating the white people and you're one of the not white people, my advice is never kill your own race to set another race free, or they will hate you forever and they will use that. They will guilt trip into slacking off and not working and leeching off of your people for the rest of all of time. They will call you an oppressor for the rest of all time. They will not appreciate it. And it'll be the death of your people. Your people will go extinct. So just don't do that. Don't do it. It's like they make us regret all the good we did. And then we don't get credit. And then we're demonized like we were the worst people ever. Were we the worst people ever? Were we the worst people ever? You know what? You write about Haiti now. I'm not arguing that. But West Africa didn't ban slavery, did they? You still got slavery. No, yeah, Haiti did. Haiti rose up and killed the French and got their freedom. They went and they took a pig, they sacrificed it and give their souls to the devil on a hill. They spread the blood all over the hill, and they rose up and they killed the French, and they worship a bunch of demons. You look at Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. They on the same island, and you split that island in half. And on one half is pretty good, and in Haiti it's always poor, it's always violence, it's always crime, there's always disasters and everything. But if any Christians go to Haiti, a lot of times they get killed. Haitians believe that there's got to be this balance of good and evil, and if people are being too good, it upsets the balance. They do a lot of animal sacrifice, a lot of blood sacrifice. They'll take pots and bash it on their head till they bleed. Then they'll drink the blood, become possessed by demons, and act all crazy. Yeah, but yeah, I will say this. Haiti did fight for their own freedom. I will say Haiti did that, but not America. It wasn't like that in America, and it damn sure wasn't like that in Africa. West Africa kept fighting for the right to keep slavery, because the whole reason they're in a mess today is their whole economy was based on selling other Africans off into slavery. And then that led to a labor shortage. And the rest of the world was industrializing and being able to produce more. And they didn't have the population because they had sold all the people around off into slavery. You know, if a man died in India, his wife was burnt on his funeral fire until Britain showed up in India. In China, little girls' feet was broken all to pieces and bound tight together because they thought they looked cute with little feet. And that was put to an end. All around the world, people had slavery as the norm until Protestant white people in Britain and America freed the slaves. And I mean, yes, white people had slaves. So did everyone else. But white people were divided on the issue. A lot of white people thought that slavery should end. But we developed our morality ahead of the rest of the world. The whole reason people think slavery is bad now is because they were taught that by white people. No one saw an issue with it. Every nation had slaves, whether that be Korea, whether that be the Arabs, whether that be the Jews, whether that be the Indians, everyone. But the Jews, any kind of education you get from Jews, they're going to leave everything else out, and they're only going to focus on the fact that white people had slaves. They're not going to put it in its proper context. We invented the idea that slavery was wrong. We're the ones who died and bled. You know, like, we were starting to be oppressed by Britain, and we said we would rather have death than slavery. We said, give us liberty or give us death. And we took the risk and we fought for our freedom. The rest of the people just said, yes, master, don't hit me with a whip. I'll be a slave, whatever you say, just don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. They didn't fight for their own freedom. We rescued them. We said, and who does this? Who kills people of their own race to free a totally different race that won't even fight for their own freedom? Who does that? We do. Now, a single thank you just will be hated for all of time. It'll be used as an excuse for all time. You go to work. I worked at Husqvarna. And at Husqvarna, this is a factory that makes lawnmowers and stuff. There were a couple of white women working there, but it was mostly white men. And then with the Mexicans, it was about half and half, men and women. And with the blacks, there was very few black men that worked compared to black women. There were lots of black women working there. And the black women worked pretty well. But the black men were lazy, complaining all the time. I'm not a slave. They're working us like a slave. They were always slacking off. Every job I've ever worked at, the black people don't work as hard as the white people. And if a black person works as hard as the white people that are just sort of mediocre workers, they're considered a good worker. And then they just have no shame. They will take as much welfare as they can possibly get while claiming to be oppressed. They will have the highest murder rate, the highest rape rate, the highest robbery rate. They will abort 48% of their babies, kill almost a baby for every baby that's born. They will cost, on average, the taxpayer $750,000 per lifetime. And then they'll say we're oppressing them and keeping them down, when really we're busy just going to work. We have no time to be plotting to keep the black man down. We're not. I mean, you could argue that by giving them free stuff, that's what's keeping them down. That's what's hindering their development and their advancement. We're lifting more weights, and we're letting them atrophy by not making them carry their own weight. You could make that argument. And like, people will get mad, but the truth hurts. But the truth can hurt you temporarily, and then you can do something about it. But as long as people ignore the truth, as long as people pretend like it's not true, they're never going to fix the problem. And there are some very uncomfortable truths that people don't want to accept. Like, if you give women political power, it will destroy your entire civilization. That's the end. That's the beginning of rapid debt that can never be paid back and below replacement birth rates every single time it's ever happened in any country that it's ever happened in. You're just not able to give women the vote and keep your civilization. That's a hard truth to swallow. Here's another hard truth to swallow. IQ is not evenly distributed among the races. Neither is foot size. Neither is dick size. You know, like, look at the Congo. They got the lowest IQ, the biggest dick size, and they don't have big feet. The biggest feet people are Europeans and Russians. There's all kind of things that people believe that are not true, mostly because they just saw it on TV. They just heard it from somebody, and they never looked in to see if it was true. And a lot of the truth is suppressed. There's a lot of truths that are suppressed. And if you love the truth, you're going to be hated. If you love the truth, though, you'll be able to see the truth. And there's a lot of people that they don't want to believe the truth. It is painful to accept that the lack of success is someone's own fault. There's other factors that come into play, but especially if you're in America, if you don't ever get nowhere in America, it's your own fault. It's not because you're being oppressed. You haven't applied yourself. You haven't tried. You did not manage your time wisely. You did not spend your money well. You cannot live off, you cannot take it, you cannot not be a net taxpayer. Take $750,000 of government assistance in your life. Waste your money on overpriced clothes, drugs, gambling, lottery tickets. Not ever really be a hard worker. You know, you can't just make every poor decision that you can possibly make. And then when you're not doing as good as other people, say, I'm oppressed. You're oppressing yourself. No one's really keeping you down. No one's really oppressing you. You're just limited by your own capabilities and your own willingness to apply yourself. And I'm going to tell you this. If you have less intelligence but better work ethic, you will outdo someone with more intelligence with poor work ethic. If you are less able in body, but you have more self-discipline, you'll outdo someone that's more able in body, that's lazy and don't apply themselves. Now, obviously, it would help. It would help to have higher IQ. It would help to have a stronger body. It would help to be more fertile, obviously. But I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that, even with less potential, way outdo other people just because they apply themselves. You don't really have to have a lot to really go very far in life if you really want it. But a lot of success all depends on your ability to deal with uncomfortableness, your ability to delay gratification and delay pleasure. If you can put off short-term pleasure for long-term gain, that's the biggest indicator of success right there. and also your attitude and mentality. If your attitude and mentality is every shortcoming and failure is someone else's fault, you're not going to go nowhere in life. And even when it is true to, even if it's true to a degree, you can only control what you do. You can't really control what everybody else is doing. So if you're always focused on where you don't have power, you're hurting your own self. You have to take responsibility and accountability. What can you do to improve your life? That's where your real power is. That's where your real power, you trying to change everybody else and change the whole entire system and everything to benefit you, is going to be a waste of energy. You would get way further to just say, what am I doing wrong? Where am I wasting time at? Where am I wasting money at? Where could I learn a new skill at? If you will stop being a victim, if you will stop making excuses, if you will stop blaming everybody else, if you stop complaining and crying about reparations and just go work, save money, invest money, you'll get way further in life. You have people come in this country with nothing at all. Nothing at all. With a lower IQ. Nigerians have a lower average IQ than African American blacks. But when Nigerians come to America with nothing, they outdo African American blacks because they have a different mindset. They're not blaming others. They're taking accountability. They're focusing on education and hard work and investing their money wisely. And they, you know, if an Indian comes over here, or a Chinese comes over here, or a Nigerian comes over here, or a Moroccan comes over here, or a Mexican comes over here with absolutely nothing, no connections whatsoever, they will still be more successful than the African American black man. And that's because they're not blaming everybody else. It's like the mentality of a child. Somebody else needs to give me some money. Somebody else needs to buy my food. Somebody else needs to pay my rent. Somebody else needs to educate me. Somebody else needs to come fight for my freedom. You gotta stand up. You gotta just be a man. Quit being a child for your entire existence. You know, a lot of people, them food stamps is what's going to keep them poor forever because they're never going to get hungry enough to get a job. They're never going to get hungry enough to get a better job because they're never hungry. They can just slack off and do nothing, and they're never going to starve to death and die. That safety net has ruined so many people. It has caused more poverty. It didn't lift anyone out of poverty. The welfare state has produced more poverty, not less. And it's also got the IQ of the entire country trending down. Because you're rewarding failure. You're rewarding nothing. You're paying people to be sorry as fuck. You're paying people to be children. Any man that's eating, that is not working for his food, ought to be ashamed of himself, that he's being a child and other men are taking care of him. And so, I mean, how can you call yourself oppressed when you could really sit back and do nothing and eat off of everyone else's labor? You're not oppressed. You just haven't grown up. Grow up. Or don't. You know, that's your choice. But y'all, you know, y'all could just keep on complaining the same complaints, feeling like you're owed something over something that didn't even happen to you. You could vote. Your father could vote. Your grandfather could vote. You could all have jobs. You could all own property. You could come in like these foreigners that come in with absolutely nothing and become successful and buy up property. You could do that. But you're ceding your power over to the white man by saying, I must wait till white man gives me reparations. I'm being oppressed. And so in your mind, you're enslaving your own mind. You are your own enslaver. You're your own enemy. You're your own oppressor because you're focused on where you don't have power. If you would focus on where you do have power, if you would get ahead real quickly. And there are black people that do. They become very successful But I ain't never met a successful black man that had a victim mentality. I ain't never met a successful white person or anybody that had a victim mentality. I've never met a successful person that didn't feel guilt taking handouts. You know, it's like the whole horseshoe thing, you know, like there are billionaires that leech off the taxpayer, and there are poor people that leech off the taxpayer. But everyone that leeches off the taxpayer is a slave master. You know, there's the tyranny of the strong, but there's also the tyranny of the weak. There's where a bunch of losers group together to outvote. The whole eat the rich mentality, that's a loser mentality. That is a straight up loser mentality. Like in the French Revolution, after the French Revolution, French IQ dropped, the hype of French people dropped. If you were tall, you were more likely to get your head chopped off. If you were smart, you were more likely to get your head chopped off. If you were a productive farmer, you were more likely to get your head chopped off. The nation was just full of envy and jealousy. And they hated they were saying everyone's equal, but they was hating anybody better than them. And they killed the best of the people of France in that French Revolution. The French people were a sicklier, less healthy race after the French Revolution than before it. But, you know, I just keep eat the rich. That's a loser mentality right there. It really is. Well, it's not, though. I'm saying DNA. It's more than skin color. Your DNA affects what proportions of different sections of brain you have, how efficiently your nerves work, what ratios of muscle fibers you have, what ratios your organs are. A small percentage of DNA is the difference between being a banana and a human.